As we've just completed a very busy NHL trade deadline, I'm also predicting we're going to have an incredibly busy offseason this summer with many players changing teams via free agency or many more trades I think we're going to see as well. In today's video, I want to discuss the top 10 pending unrestricted free agents coming up for 2019. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned, we're going to have an incredibly busy offseason this summer, and I just wanted to take a look ahead to many of the top free agents that are scheduled to become unrestricted free agents this coming offseason. There's all kinds of big names that we very well could see change teams via free agency this summer. Like I mentioned, I do also think there's going to be a very busy offseason when it comes to trades, whether it be at the draft or into July or beyond once free agency gets underway. I just think it's going to be a very active summer with many players changing teams over the course of the offseason. So let's jump in here and take a look at who I think are the top 10 free agents coming up this summer. Now, they're not necessarily in any particular order here. I think the order I have them listed in is certainly very much debatable, but these are the top 10 players that I would be keying in on if I'm a GM looking to add to my team this offseason. Number 10, we have goaltender Robin Lehner, currently of the New York Islanders, who went to the Islanders on a one-year contract after being a very inconsistent goaltender over the past number of years between his time in Buffalo and Ottawa before that. Robin Lehner's certainly found his game this year. Obviously, heading into the season, it was also revealed that he had battled a lot of personal demons in the past couple of years, and for the first time in a long time had himself clean and sober and straight again and was ready to really resume his hockey career, and he has made the most of it. Along with his goaltending partner, Thomas Greiss, Lehner's been a huge part of the reasons why the New York Islanders have found themselves in first place in the Metro Division here and are having such a strong overall season. Goaltending last year was the major weakness. They were dead last in many categories, and now they're near the top in many categories, largely due to this man's part. So I do think he's likely going to get a really nice contract this coming summer. I think teams are finally going to be ready to commit to Robin Lehner on a longer-term basis for bigger dollar value. And if he stays with the Islanders, I think he'll certainly be rewarded nicely. But if he does choose to hit the open market, either way, I think he's going to get a very handsome contract here and certainly cash in for one of the big times here so far in his NHL career. At number 9, I've got big center iceman Kevin Hayes, who was recently traded from the New York Rangers over to the Winnipeg Jets. I do think it's probably unlikely that Hayes stays with Winnipeg beyond the end of this season. Obviously, free agency is going to be pretty big for Kevin Hayes. I think he's going to be able to demand a pretty decent contract here. I mean, there's not a ton of center icemen on this list. I do think Kevin Hayes will be able to demand a pretty solid contract this year. And I think one of the main reasons the Rangers traded him is they didn't want to commit to him too long term. Many feel that due to the type of skater he is, with skating not being his absolute strength here, that he might not be the type of player who lasts another 7 or 8 years in the league. But either way, as of today, he's very effective. Most teams as a number 2 center. He's really good on faceoffs. He can kill penalties, and he's not afraid to chip in on the offensive side of the game either. He's very effective that way as well. So I do think Kevin Hayes will be a very nice pickup for any team who acquires him. There's going to be lots of interest. Plenty of teams will be inquiring, and I don't think because of Winnipeg's cap situation that he likely stays there. I mean, it is possible, but it's very doubtful given the number of contracts they have. With some of their RFAs are going to need big raises, and like some of the other teams around the NHL, the Jets are going to have some very tough decisions they need to make. And like last year, their player they acquired at the deadline likely leaves via free agency this summer. Next up, we've got a long-time NHL veteran here in Joe Pavelski, the captain of the San Jose Sharks. Obviously, right now, he's a pending unrestricted free agent, but he's having another fantastic season for the Sharks. Even though he's getting up there in years, Pavelski's production is still going really strong. I think it's pretty likely that the Sharks will want to retain him. I'm a little bit surprised in a way that they haven't discussed extensions with Pavelski, but he's not the only one. You're going to see some other names on this list, and even a player like Joe Thornton, too, as well. If he wants to continue playing, I would imagine he'd want to play in San Jose more than likely. Obviously, guys like Joe Thornton, Joe Pavelski been with the Sharks for a long time and a big part of that team. So it'll be interesting to see how the Sharks proceed here beyond this season. See what they can reach, if they're able to get to the Stanley Cup Finals win a championship for guys like Thornton. Pavelski been with that club for a long time. Joe Pavelski, I do think, will likely be able to get himself a pretty good dollar value. The only question mark is term. Usually a player of his age, teams are usually a little shy to commit too long term, so we're probably looking at a 2-3 year contract, maybe 4 years at most would be my guess. He certainly won't be getting one of those super long-term deals like 7 or 8 years, not at his age, but I do think he's going to get paid very, very nicely as he's still able to produce and be a great leader at his age. More than likely, I think the odds are pretty good he remains with the Sharks, but I guess we'll see what the Sharks' plans are if they want to continue to keep him as part of the organization beyond this year. Next up, we get the recently traded Wayne Simmonds, who was traded from the Philadelphia Flyers to the Nashville Predators. I wouldn't completely rule out the fact that he could return to Philadelphia via free agency, but I do think if at the same time, though, if the odds of them signing him were good, that he likely would have been able to come to terms on a new deal before the deadline and likely would have stayed instead. Wayne Simmonds is certainly not old by any means, but certainly, it's a younger player's game. Is getting up there a little bit, but he's still producing at a pretty good rate. I do think his performance here down the stretch and into the playoffs will be a big indication of what he's able to get for a contract next season. Even 1 year ago, it was looking like, coming up on this contract and pending free agency, that he would have been able to get a longer-term deal with big money. And he very well still might, but I do think, like I said, his performance here down the stretch in the playoffs is going to be a big contributor to how well he makes out. Next up, we get New York Islanders captain Anders Lee. Now, Anders Lee's having a pretty decent season. His numbers are down a little bit, but I mean, he's hit the 35 to 40 goal plateau numerous times. Pretty solid goal scorer. Obviously, the Islanders went through a major fiasco last year with John Tavares. We just recently seen John Tavares' return to the Islanders, to play against his former team, and what the reception was like. It was a very hostile playoff-like environment. So obviously, the Islanders organization are not going to want to see another captain 1 year later walk out the door, I wouldn't think. But it's being reported right now that the sticking point on the contract extension for Anders Lee is term, according to insider Elliot Friedman. Anders Lee, I don't think has any problems with the Islanders, with them wanting to keep him, as well as even the dollar value per year. At this point, it's just a number of years. He's going to be 29 years old, so obviously, like some of these other guys that are becoming free agents at that point in their career, it's just a little bit, tough for teams to be giving out 7 and 8 year terms of players of that age. So we'll see what happens here. I know Lou Lamoriello is certainly going to play hardball here to get the best deal for the club. At the same time, he's not going to want his second captain in as many years walking out the door via free agency as well. So we'll see if they can get him locked up before he actually reaches free agency. Next up, we got Buffalo Sabres sniper Jeff Skinner. Of course, Skinner's in his first year with Buffalo after being traded from Carolina. He's having a phenomenal year. He's been an absolute excellent match here with Jack Eichel on the top line. And Skinner's having a fantastic season. Now, obviously, Skinner's a player that the Sabres likely do want to keep. There was some, chatter around his name around the deadline. Obviously, he wasn't moved. I think the Sabres are certainly wanting to keep him in the fold, likely want to extend him. He's still fairly young as well, so giving him the term, probably not going to be an issue. Of course, the one area around term that will scare teams like the Sabres a little bit is his health. Obviously, he's battled a few concussions over his years and some other injuries as well. So obviously, they want to make sure that he's going to be able to play through that contract, and his durability will certainly come into question. But his ability to score goals and put the puck in the net, certainly not going to be in question at all. I think he's a great winger for Jack Eichel, and the Sabres likely do need to make sure they lock him up long term. I think it'd be a big loss if they didn't. But I do think it's doubtful that he even makes it to July 1. But right now, where he remains without an extension, he's certainly one of the bigger names with the amount of goals he's putting in this year to keep your eye on. Next up, we got center iceman Matt Duchene. Now, Matt Duchene reportedly turned down an 8-year contract with the Senators, about $8 million per year, thereabouts, is what the reported contract offer was. There was some talk as well that he really wants to play in Nashville. Apparently, he has property there and very well likes that city a lot. So we'll see what happens if the Predators show interest. It was a team that was being reported when it comes to trade rumors earlier before he was moved to Columbus. I do think it's pretty doubtful that Matt Duchene stays in Columbus, but I wouldn't completely rule it out. And I also wouldn't completely rule out the possibility of returning to Ottawa. It's been rumored that he really enjoyed playing in the city. It's not too far from his home where he lives in Haliburton, Ontario. So he likes a lot of the other aspects of playing in Ottawa. Obviously, was not real fond of the rebuild. So the only way that likely even becomes possible if the Senators make a number of other transactions leading up to July 1 to really put this rebuild, on acceleration here and get things moving forward. Otherwise, I don't think Duchene's going to want to play there as much as he did enjoy it. He's not going to want to go through the pain and suffering of this rebuild for another few more years before they have a chance to really be competitive. So we'll see what happens here. But Matt Duchene, I think if he does leave Columbus, Nashville's certainly one of the teams that have been rumored to be very interested, but he's going to be one of the top center icemen on the free agent list, so he will command a nice contract, especially if he can produce for Columbus down the stretch and help get them into the playoffs here. Staying with the Columbus Blue Jackets narrative, 3 of the top 4 players on this list come from the Blue Jackets organization, now that Duchene's a part of that as well. But at number 3, I've got goalie Sergei Bobrovsky, who's really had an up and down season. Not the absolute best performance, but he's really proven himself in the past, and he's certainly going to get himself paid quite handsomely this summer. There's been a lot of talk about him maybe going to Florida. We'll see what happens. There was a lot of trade rumors around the fact that the Panthers might be looking to make a big acquisition from the Blue Jackets with him included. But given Bobrovsky's past performance and his pedigree and the Vezina Trophy victories before, he is definitely going to get paid quite handsomely, whether it be, in Florida or anywhere else. But I really don't think it's likely that he returns to Columbus after everything that's gone on this season. And he's going to be one of the bigger names to keep your eye on this season. Number 2, I've got San Jose Sharks defenseman Erik Karlsson. Now, Karlsson went to San Jose without a contract extension, and he still is without one, even though he was only eligible to get that 8-year extension after the trade deadline has gone by. At this point, there's been no talks of any contract extensions taking place at this point yet. There's still plenty of time, though, between now and July the 1st, plus Karlsson's been hurt, battling an injury. The Sharks are more focused on getting themselves into the playoffs, winning as many games here as they can to kind of solidify themselves in the top position possible for the playoff run. So right now it's kind of on the back burner, but as we get through the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs, I think discussions will certainly pick up. I mean, there was some conditions in the trade about an extra pick going to Ottawa should he re-sign. So I know the Senators are going to be watching that situation very closely as well. Even though Karlsson started off quite slowly this year, obviously it's a major adjustment going to a new team, new conference, playing on the West Coast versus the East Coast. It's very, very, very different. It took him a while to get adjusted, but even though he's missed some time due to injuries, numbers overall have picked up. I do think he will certainly get himself a very high contract this coming offseason for sure, like we all expected him to do. He's still one of the premier defensemen in the game and will certainly command top dollar, whether that be from San Jose or somewhere else. But now that he's been there a while, I do think the odds are pretty decent that he stays with San Jose. But at the same time, we just don't know exactly what they're going to be willing to offer him on a contract extension. And I think obviously their playoff run here, or lack thereof, might very well dictate what they do with a lot of their pending free agents here moving into the offseason. Number 1 free agent on my list that's going to be most interesting to watch, in my opinion, is Columbus Blue Jackets sniper Artemi Panarin. Now, Panarin's a player we've talked about quite a bit, along with Pavelski, through NHL trade rumors heading into the deadline. The Blue Jackets might decide to move them since they're likely leaving via free agency. It's just going to be a matter of where he ends up going. I mean, there's been a lot of links to a numerous amount of teams, really. With Panarin, there's been a lot of talk that he wants to play in Florida. We've seen, return to Chicago, maybe out in LA to help accelerate their rebuild. There's just a number of talking points here that we've heard over the course of this season. It's really unclear exactly what he wants. Does he even know himself where he wants to go? It is very likely, based on a lot of different things and rumors we've heard throughout the year, that Panarin and Bobrovsky very well could end up playing for the same team once free agency comes and they decide what each of them want to do. Obviously, the team that would make the most sense for them to do that with would be the Panthers, in my opinion. But I guess we will see. It might seem like an odd choice, but when it comes to these guys, there's a lot more that goes into their decision, when it comes to the personal side of the game as well. So certainly let me know what your thoughts and opinions are down in the comments. Where do you think these players are going to sign this offseason? Do you see them re-signing with their current teams, or do you see exploring the market and maybe signing somewhere else via free agency? If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you do, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.